Hi there. This is Alex Wiman. It's February 17th, Monday. Just finished up with a MSNE NBC hit with Ali covering down for Andrea Mitchell. Frankly, it was an awesome opportunity. We covered a lot of ground on a very, very complex topic, and I'll post that um, interview shortly. But I wanted to touch on issues that maybe we didn't cover it in sufficient depth and really dive a little bit further into what is an extremely complex series of events. So you have this week you have Marco Rubio and who's Secretary of State, and Mike Waltz, who's the National Security Advisor. The two pros, really, like them or not, these are the folks that are probably the most competent on national security, arriving in Saudi Arabia to initiate these peace talks to end the Russia-Ukraine war. Possibly JD Vance will show up. This is all, of course, condition setting for a further conversation between principals, Putin and Trump. What I'll say is that you have formats in which negotiations kind of bubble up from even lower levels. Secretary of State is pretty high up, and then ultimately the deals are then closed. Everything's arranged ahead of time at the principal level between the presidents. Here, it's probably going to be more outlines, broad strokes, maybe some general agreements, but it's going to be up to Trump and Putin to hash things out. Not necessarily the best situation. Um, Trump is easily manipulated by Putin. Not very good under preparation, regardless of how he builds himself as a deal maker. Potentially just to get a deal, just to claim that he won or ended the Russia-Ukraine war. He might agree to just about anything. Unclear if Ukraine is going to be in the talks. Right now, the impression is that they might not be. Interestingly enough, the U.S. has not actually participated in any of the talks thus far. We've actually not had any conversations at this level until Trump came back into office or was had won the election. So the U.S. is jumping in with both feet into a situation where we haven't been involved. The Europeans have been, if anything, playing a larger role, and the Ukrainians. Now the Europeans and Ukrainians potentially are on the margins, and this is the preferred format for Russia. It deals with the global hegemons. It elevates its own position. It's talking to Trump. It's normalizing relationships, and this is something that each administration over the course of the past six administrations, if you all the way back to George H.W. Bush, had to learn these lessons the hard way. With Russia under Yeltsin, Gorbachev, and Soviet Union under Gorbachev, Yeltsin, then Putin for the past 25 years, everybody has had to try. Even though Trump tried before and wasn't successful, he's trying again. And we usually end up on the losing end of that. Russians have had 25 years of continuity. They've banked some of the things. You know, Trump might be trying to reset the table. No care for history, no care for negotiations that occurred before. But the Russians won't start there. They'll bank the things that the president has already conceded on. What has he conceded on? He's conceded Ukrainian territory, and then rolled that back. That was Hegseth, Secretary Hegseth, saying that, Trump initially supporting it, and then saying, "Well, we can't give Putin a win." That's logical. Trump wants to be the winner. He doesn't want Putin to be the winner. If he could be a winner by catering to Putin, that's an optimal scenario. But he wants to be the winner. He also has given up on Ukraine and NATO, a major turn. We're talking about 17 years of policy all the way back from 2008 in the NATO Bucharest summit being reversed. And then again, some bit of rollback because Hegseth was over his skis. Trump was initially over his skis, and his national security staff said, "Not a good idea. You're appeasing. You're looking weak." And Trump himself said again, doesn't want Russia to be the winner. He doesn't. He wants to be the winner. So a lot of things going on here. I would say that we're in a situation where the U.S. is probably going to be a victim of the worst mistakes we've made over the course of the last 30 plus years. 34 years since Ukraine's independence. Those mistakes have been putting Russia first, not an America first policy that Donald Trump keeps promising to deliver, but a Russia first policy, being flexible to Russia's demands, resolve threats. We haven't even started a threat phase. When Russia doesn't really get its way, they resort to nuclear saber rattling, and that's when things get dicey. That's when Trump is most likely to buckle. So we'll have those, falling victim to fears and probably some hopes of ending this war. Also, another pitfall of, again, 34 years of history. So we'll relearn those lessons. But what I feel relatively comfortable saying is that Ukraine is willing to bend over backwards and compromise to end this war. That probably includes territorial concessions. These are not, it shouldn't be understood as permanent. These are setting aside thorny issues of territory. Ultimately, Ukraine believes it could get back this territory, if not under Putin's regime in the future, if Russia wants to normalize relationships. I think even so, Ukraine is not going to completely sacrifice its national security interests. So it is not going to sign a paper that says you'll give up, some $18 trillion worth of rare earths to settle a debt that Trump believes he's owed, which is about $100 billion that the Biden administration delivered to Ukraine. 80% of that being spent on the U.S. defense sector. Ukrainians not really touching that, and not even promising future aid deliveries. That's not going to happen. Zelensky already said no to that. Giving up territory without some sort of security guarantees. Now there are discussions of the Brits, France putting troops on the ground as peacekeepers after the war stops. China weighed in on this. The Chinese want to be peacekeepers, of course. The Chinese, for any territory that they would be peacekeepers for, would be more in the role of occupiers, catering to Russian interests. Dangerous that China wants to inject itself into this, but it also is something that now the Russians are going to insist on, and they're going to want Chinese peacekeepers, not European peacekeepers. And the Russians being completely uncompromising in reality. I mean, we should understand that Putin is a sophisticated actor, so he'll make the right noises. He's sending his minister of foreign affairs there, his senior policy advisor to negotiate with Waltz and Rubio, and they'll make the noises to make sure that the U.S. kind of stays on side, continues to cater to Russian interests, but they won't really be flexible. So we're in a situation where ultimately the U.S. will have to learn the lessons the hard way. Ukraine is going to be in a weakened condition. I think the Russians are going to play for sanctions relief. They're going to play for ending U.S. support. The Ukrainians are going to have to go it alone for a while with what we've already pushed over to them in the waning days of the Biden administration. The Europeans are going to be there trying to support Ukraine in a bigger way. But it's going to be a muddling through with Ukraine weaker, Russia stronger, morale buoyed, weakened on the Ukrainian side. All these things in place until the Trump administration learns the lesson, hopefully, and recognizes that the only way that Trump could get a win and put America first is by supporting Ukraine, by supporting the Europeans. That is not a completely remote possibility. There are going to be some conditions to this. I think a deal where the U.S. invests, a fair deal where the U.S. invests into Ukraine and to access rare earths is actually a good thing. Our strongest relationships with Ukraine have been when there is a value and an interest component. The U.S. securing rare earth mineral rights scratches the itch for interests. The values proposition, will be appealing to some parts of the U.S. Establishment, some traditional Republicans that are actually still even being vocal in support of Ukraine. You could see that with House and Senate leadership showing up at MSC meeting with Zelensky. The Europeans assuming a bigger role with burden sharing, another area where I think there should be some sort of rebalancing. We are being, Trump administration, of course, is being very heavy-handed, burning lots of bridges, but some sort of rebalancing that allows the U.S. to potentially put more resources towards the looming threat of China and Chinese aggression. Not necessarily a bad thing. So those parts of the formula should play out and counsel the Trump administration to stay the course with Europe, stay the course with Ukraine. But again, lots of unpredictability. Not this shouldn't be perceived as intentional. This should be perceived as just Trump era chaos. But it does really does kind of throw a lot of players into tailspin. Our allies, most importantly, Russia and Ukraine. Um, I'm sorry, Europe and Ukraine and Russia also thrown for a bit of a tailspin, trying to figure out what it could do, how it could keep the Trump administration engaged. So a lot going on here. I think the best thing that we could see here is the continuing efforts of the national security establishment trying to drag Trump to make good decisions for U.S. long-term national security interests. And that fight is going on. We could see that evidently and clearly over the course of the past week. And the longer that goes on, the longer the U.S. stays on sides, the more pressure shifts back to Russia and eases on Ukraine. So that's the state of affairs. Looking forward to having another conversation about this with you as events unfold. Book is coming out next week. Really dives into these issues, as historical mistakes, and provides a prescription going forward on how we can do better, making sure that we do secure an American interest and not put Russia first, as we've historically done. Thanks for listening in, and catch you later.